Hey, you guys. I'm Suzanne Titcomar. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering for 10 years. And I still continue to cover that section of the world just a little bit, not like I once did, but there it is. If you could do the YouTubey things, I'd appreciate that. These are just my opinions. Don't bully me on, but talk about today. And just don't even be rude to each other in the comments. It's just one of those days for me. I have read the Ginger Duggar book probably one and a half times through. I haven't finished it, my second reading. And I was taking copious notes and I was going to do a review. I've since changed my mind. I'm not doing a review of this book. Why? Hey, Christine, because everybody needs a space to deconvert. And what Ginger is doing is deconversion. She can call it disentanglement all she wants, but it is deconversion. And we go through deconversion. Hey, Megan, when we have to tear it down and rebuild. We all do it. Everybody who leaves their church of origin does it. You take away what works for you. You say, no, that doesn't work for me. Let me see what's better after that. Everyone does it. We're just getting to see Ginger do it instead of most people because she's got, I guess, C-level status as a celebrity because her parents put her on a reality television show. The book is pretty horrific on some ways because for me, all it did was just trigger me. It was an extremely triggering book, starting with the very beginning where she was talking about free ginger. And those free ginger ladies and I have knocked heads through the years. I used to be a member of Free Ginger in the early days when it first spun off from Television Without Pity. But then when things changed, it's kind of funny because I met Vicki Garrison through Free Ginger. And once I started hanging out with Vicki and doing Vicki things and helping Vicki with NLQ, suddenly I became somebody that they talked crap about too. So to see Ginger referencing a group that has been so horrible to so many people, and I mean pretty horrible. And the last time they talked about me was the one that made me laugh the hardest. It was when I basically fell out with Vicki Garrison publicly. I had stopped many months before promoting anything that Vicki was doing because I believed, well, I had enough people tell me about what Vicki was doing with the money where it finally hit home for me. And I had to say, no, that's not cool. Well, Vicki and I started fighting when we had our falling out because she decided out of the blue to move to Albania. And I've been living in Costa Rica like 3 years or so now. And Albania is marked on the U.S. State Department website as do not visit. It's marked there that way. Now, even though I live overseas, let me tell you something. I live in a safe place. I live in a place that I've visited 5 or 6 times. Hey, autistic shill. I even came for like a month at one point when we decided we would probably move here. And I was all in. I'd done enormous amounts of research. I'd visited over and over. Vicki did none of that. And so that's where her and I had our falling out. So Free Ginger laughed about that quite a bit and said what a hypocrite I was for telling Vicki she couldn't move overseas. That's not what I said. I said, don't move overseas without researching what it is you're doing to the nth degree. And that means looking at the State Department website too. Visit. Don't just decide, hey, I'm moving here and I've never been, but I'm going to go on what my assumptions are. So Free Ginger got quite a laugh over that about us, and that's cool. It's not a place that I normally have anything to do with. So to see Ginger start off her book that way, I was already triggered. And to see her defending John MacArthur is just mind-boggling. Hey, Grace Peter. Screw Free Ginger? Yeah, screw those ladies. There have been some that have been wonderful that I've met through there. Most of them have been horrible. In fact, somebody named Curious said they were going to take me down. Well, here's the problem about taking me down with secret information. I live my life. I live my life openly. There aren't any big secrets. Hey, Meemaw Dragon, hadn't seen you in a while. Hadn't seen any of you guys in a while. She's always photobombing me. She stays right here. You can't really see this well, but it's a quilt I made that I pulled out 3 months ago to look at because I'm using the pattern to make a new one for my bed. And she's since claimed it. That's her quilt. She lays right there on her quilt and is really happy. And if you move the quilt, she'll let you know. So between the free Ginger, the whole promotion of things that I think are awful, all of the times where she talked about being victimized, and especially talking about suffering from an eating disorder, from what reality television did to her. Curious was the owner, 1.5 feet in the grave, terrible health. I'm sorry to hear that for Curious, but I'm happy to know that Curious doesn't have time enough to stalk me any longer. So there's just so much deconversion things in there. And I know Ginger is trying to help other people, but I really feel like the book is not a positive. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's the most wonderful book ever. Anybody who's ever gone through deconversion and then reconversion, because you have to construct something in its place, whether that something is no belief or hardcore atheism or Hare Krishna or whatever, it doesn't matter. Something goes in that spot where you've torn it out. You've torn your original thing out. So I'm not too surprised to see her hitting up John MacArthur, her husband's favorite theologian. Yeah, we seem like we all follow each other around a lot. So that's why I'm not going to be doing a review. So if you're dying for a negative review, you can hit up that YouTuber that we tried never to talk about. She has been making hay, making bank since I don't know how long on this thing, including reading and doing a review. Well, not reading, she's listening to it. I don't know if I could handle listening to it. As it is with the reading of it, I've had to just keep stopping because it was just way too much. John MacArthur roasts me the wrong way. Prairie, John MacArthur is no different than Bill Gothard, except there aren't the molestation claims. They believe the same thing on so many of this stuff. I sure love having you around me, Moth Dragon. Yeah. I caught part of that YouTube's episode. I had to shut it off. She's spewing nonsense and knows nothing about the topic. Grace Peter, that's the problem. And that's the whole problem with the book for me is if you're going to talk about these things, you have to be able to explain what it is you mean. Because this is a subculture that most of the US doesn't have any idea about. And certainly none of the Duggar fans, the Duggar huggers, as somebody likes to call them. And by the way, somebody said, she invented that name, Duggar hugger. I was like, no, she did not. That's been around forever, as long as I remember, going back to television without a pity. Anybody that came promoting the Duggars was automatically listed as a Duggar hugger. Just like everything else, borrowed from elsewhere. Christine, I know her deconversion story, parts of it she's taken from me. So it's comedy when she does that stuff. Duggar Hugger came from NLQ, I thought. No, it goes way back before us even. It goes back. So NLQ, I used to use Duggar Hugger because like Duggar Huggers would show up. In fact, during the whole Josh Duggar expose, when everything came out about Josh, we had huggers that would show up and chew us out. It was actually kind of funny. I thought she was using your story. She has no shame. She has been using my story. The other thing is she said, hey, Christoph Van, she said also last night that she had been, I guess, in a mental health facility as a teen. That's the first time I've ever heard of that story at all. Yet the troll has heard my story of when I was 15 and I had suffered through cancer and had been SA'd by an acquaintance. I ended up for a month or two in one of those places. It's not something I'm happy about or proud of, but it happened and she knows about it. So for her to suddenly say, "Oh, I was in one of those places," when she had told me she'd never been. She told her viewers she'd never been before. To suddenly come up with that story is ridiculous. Yes, she is, but I think she switched it up and she's doing it on different places, not necessarily YouTube. YouTube has new rules in place, so she may run afoul of that if she tries. Busted again, always busted, always busted. And I'm just shocked every time she comes out with something where I'm like, girl, I did that. The Duggar show made me feel inadequate as a parent. The mom stressed teaching the children self-control and how well she did it. Then came Josh's behavior, all lies, in my humble opinion. Meanwhile, Dragon, I'm really going to go back here. 2006, when the Duggars were first appearing on the radar, and I was leaving my old Quiverful church. We had prayed. It had come through the prayer chain because all these churches are all interlinked to pray for the Duggars because they had the possibility of getting a show. And there had already been chatter about praying for their eldest son who had issues. And so before I had ever seen the Duggars' first show, I knew there was stuff there. And so did everybody else involved in those things. So who knows? Who knows how far back it goes? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Grace Peter, it makes it particularly hard right now. And that's another reason why I'm having difficulty with reading the book. Back about 10 or 11 weeks ago, when I first started having the ant heap contacting me about my mother and insisting I come do something, I have just been not myself. I've just been knocked around and not myself. Let's just put it that way. I've been very not unhappy, but I've been like, oh crap, why do I have to deal with this? And the memories have come flooding back. So because I'm having memories of my childhood, things I hadn't thought about in 40 years, it's not been a pleasant, fun time for me. Yeah, and Crystal Fan is exactly right. Don't feel like that because those people were not perfect parents and they tried to pretend they were from the very beginning. Self-control doesn't leave an SA predator to have continued access to victims. Self-control removes the danger so the victim. Absolutely, Prairie. That makes me crazy that they did that they covered for him. But I want to say this is very common in Quiverful type families. I never saw it to that extent of my old church, but I saw some things that came pretty damn close that always just amazed me, particularly women that would excuse any kind of evil their husbands did. Now, I do know one that discovered the husband was doing that to the kids and did eventually divorce him, kicked him out when he went to jail, of course, and divorced him at the advice of our pastor. It was one of the few times I thought our pastor stepped up and did the right thing. And one of the reasons that I thought was perfectly fine to divorce somebody. There was no such thing as a perfect parent ever, anywhere, full stop. Exactly. We just do the best we can do and hope it's enough. That's what I have. Hey, Dances in the Rain. That's what I've learned. And I've tried to keep to that. I mean, even with the situation I'm dealing with where I'm trying to be kind to my mother, was never necessarily very kind to me as a child. And it takes some doing. But at the same time, I got drama here, dumb drama that I'll talk about in a minute. But it's just idiotic drama where somebody's inserting themselves into something that they shouldn't be inserting themselves into at all and not doing what they're saying they're doing. So because this is Ginger's deconversion story, and I don't think this really needs to be a book. It doesn't need to be out there in the public. This is something that Ginger herself needs to just keep to herself. It One day we're going to see a tell-all book from a Duggar. I'm sure of that. But this is not that book. But at the same time, this book reveals way too much, and you're exposing everybody to the fact that you haven't really disentangled or deconverted even. You've just made another little baby step on your journey, because John MacArthur is not much less toxic than Bill Gothard was. He may be letting you wear pants, my girl, but he's never going to let you work a job. I really liked watching Jess and Duggar's videos. Can't stand her husband. Well, Christoph Ann, I actually have a slight bit of liking for him, because he has he's rejected some important things in Duggartown, even though they're still not using any kind of birth control or spacing their kids or anything. And I've always felt that's a recipe for disaster. It just is. Your body's not made to have a new baby every 10 months or every year or whatever. Look out. Anyone's essay, my kid and I'm probably going to jail. Unless the law gets to them before I do. I know I'm the same way. Can't be perfect parent, but good ones fiercely protect their kids. Exactly, Prairie. And I'm going to say this because I was essayed as a child by a dentist. There were so many times when I would bring my kids to the dentist or the library or whatever, and I would be in the room at all times. And I was told, oh, that's not necessary. You can go wait in the waiting room. It's like, I am not going anywhere. I said, why? Well, because I was essayed as a kid by a dentist. I know how quickly this can happen, and the best parents don't even catch it. So I did a lot of that. Jess is such a B word. I have heard that. I don't know. I don't follow the Duggars like I once did. For me, the Duggars came along at exactly the right moment in my life for me to just want to vomit, okay, their show. Because I was deconverting. I was taking the very first baby steps of deconversion away from my high demand religious organization that was my church, and I'm not going to call a C word, because I think that that kind of minimizes what actual C words are. It's not like they're Jim Jones and they're forcing everybody to drink the Kool-Aid. No, that is a C word. Now, I like to follow Dr. Stephen Hassan. I don't know if anybody else does. He is the one that did the bite model that explains what a CULT is. And some churches do fit the bite model. Not all of them, but some of them do. And he's always has an interesting perspective. I like to follow him on Twitter. He posts videos of stuff he's done, talks he's given. He's got a lot of wisdom in regards to all of this. And yeah, you can't let your tiny human out of your sight. You just can't. I did that for years and years and years, and finally I started to ease up a little bit once I hit the teenage years, but we had intense conversations about that sort of thing too. It's like, this is not right. I don't care who it is doing it to you, what they're saying to you. This is not right. Don't let them do it. I mean, and I think that as parents now, things are way different than they were for our parents' generation or generations since. I think that the last, maybe since, for me, it started in the 90s and mid 90s. I was very, 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 from early 90s on, I was very um, over the top watching because of what I'd been through. But before that, shoot, I remember being a kid and being tossed out of the door first thing in the morning and told, go play, and not expected to come back until dark, unless maybe you came home to have a sandwich and a Coke, especially not at church. Steve and Sue Anderson are very correct in that. Exactly. I hate to give Steven Anderson any kind of props, but guess what? He is right about that. He and Zoo. You really have to be extremely careful with church, because some churches do not do their due diligence to find out if somebody is a good person or not. They don't do any kind of background checks, none of that. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna have to go. I'm losing my voice again. The asthma's been bad. I'll have to tell you the story of the crazy lady later. Have a great day.